I mean, it's part of the anarchist philosophy. If people are starving, you don't write a letter to your congressman. The idea of direct action is that if people don't have enough food, you take it.
Well, hello, and welcome to the New Architects. I am Jason.
I'm Thomas.
And it's been a while since we've done a show, and
it has. We're a little grayer.
We are definitely like grayer.
Just as determined.
So it's really great. I'm really excited to be here with you, Thomas, to do this show because we have a wonderful, phenomenal individual with us on this show today.
Indeed.
Her name is Anneke Campbell. She is a writer, filmmaker, award-winning poet, activist, and the writer of this book, which we'll talk about soon, We the People, the story from the community rights movement in the United States. And so I want to bring Anneke onto the show now. So welcome.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Okay. Do you mind if I just tell you that my name actually is Anneke?
Oh, sorry. You can tell me that.
Okay. Thanks. It's Dutch name.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been saying it. How long have we talked? And I've said it wrong every time.
I don't remember actually, but it's okay.
Thank you, and please forgive me.
Absolutely, of course.
So welcome. I think we kind of want to start off with just kind of getting to know you a little bit and a little bit to know about the community rights movement. What is the community rights movement, and what is your involvement in it?
Well, let's see. I think I have to start maybe with my involvement, which really started with environmental activism and my concern for the things that are going on in communities all across this country where people are trying to say no to fracking or mining or a big box store and trying to stop these things, sludge dumping, you name it, and are unable to do so, unable to say no to something that's actually going to bring harm. And as an environmental activist, I've been aware of that for many, many years. And about 12 years ago, maybe, I heard an environmental lawyer named Thomas Lindsay speak at a conference. And I'd never heard the word community rights, and I'd never heard the rights of nature or any of those things. I was an environmentalist. And one of the things that Thomas Lindsay said was that there has never been an environmental movement in this country because movements drive rights into the Constitution, and the environmental movement has not driven any rights into the Constitution. The environmental movement works on regulation. And that was sort of a wake-up call for me to think about that. And to think about the fact that movements such as the suffrage movement for women's getting the vote, equality, the abolition movement, all work that way. They work to drive rights for what was regarded as property and became so in the case of slaves became considered human beings. And I started thinking about what is nature really under the law property and how difficult it is to protect when it's property, because whoever owns property can do whatever they want. So a light bulb went off in my head when I heard Thomas Lindsay speak a long time ago. And I found out that he had started an organization called CELDF. It's actually called the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, CELDF for short, CELDF. And that he was trying to protect communities across the country, but starting out especially in Pennsylvania and the Northeast, to protect communities from mining and sludge dumping and water withdrawal, all from corporations who were coming in and doing these things. And the way that he was doing it was quite different from what is the normal activism in communities, which is to go to the zoning people and the state and say, please don't do this to us. There's reasons you shouldn't, and then there's an environmental impact statement and so on, and then the corporation goes ahead and does it anyway. And I started to recognize through, actually what happened was I heard Tom speak, and he was teaching something called the Democracy School, and I went and took that curriculum, it was a 3-day course. And I learned all about regulatory law and the Constitution. I learned about corporate personhood rights, which we now all know from Citizens United that corporations are people, according to the Supreme Court. And I started to understand why we're in the pickle that we're in terms of being able to protect our communities. As my involvement with CELDF, the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, continued over the years, the concept of community rights started to become more and more and more defined. And so to finally answer the question that you started with, community rights basically are the ability of a community to determine what happens within its boundaries within that community. So community rights actually can include environmental rights and democracy rights and worker rights. Those kinds of things are all a part of a community's ability to control what happens in that community. And so, for instance, if a community comes together with its government and says, we don't actually want fracking in this community because we want our water to be protected, that we believe that should be a right of that community to say no. Right now, in terms of the law in the United States, communities don't actually have a right to say no to any harmful activity. They only have a right to say how much harm they are willing to take on. And even that is mostly determined for them. Mostly they don't get to say, well, 1 part per million of toxins in the water. But they don't have a right to say no. So
Right.
I don't know if that maybe ask me more.
Well, I think it's good. Were you going to say something?
No, that was very articulate. Do you, if you track back for a second and give us just a taste of your biography personally, and then maybe if there is a moment that stands out to you when you first realized you would be an environmentalist?
Boy, I think that I was probably in the, I'm sort of an old hippie, and in the 60s, I came to America, went to college, and I got involved with the civil rights movement and with the anti-war movement. And my father was a resistance fighter during the Second World War in the Netherlands. I think, and he was a journalist. I think I've always had a huge bred into me care and concern for people's rights and for people to live free of harm and oppression. And I've always been very concerned about war, and I've always loved nature. And I don't. It's interesting what my first activity as an environmentalist, I don't even remember, but it really came together with being a peace activist. And that's such a good question. I really don't know the answer. I don't know when my first specific environmental activism was. But I know that over the years, I celebrated Earth Day and cared about the quality of the water and the air in the community that I lived. And I've been a gardener, and so I learned about soil and I learned about ecosystems.
Right.
And it became it just always seems so self-evident to me that you can't mess with the air over there and not have it affect over here.
Right.
You
Or
know,
the water table.
you cannot mess with the water over there and not. And so over the years, I think I've just gotten more and more as the data about what we're doing to the planet is what we're doing to the soil and the air and the water and so on is becoming more and more evident as what we're doing to each other, to humans. I just think it's come naturally to me. I don't know if that's very articulate. But
Yeah, very much. And a lot of times it's something that just builds up and it's a combination of conditions, and there's not just one particular memory or moment. Thank you.
Yeah. I can remember my first, March on Washington, but that was against the Vietnam War. So, and none of this seems separate to me. It all feels like one cloth in a way.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, and thanks for asking that, Thomas. That was good.
I also one other thing I would say, I became a mother, and I cared about nutrition and what I was feeding my child, and I cared about doing it all as healthily and naturally as possible. And I think probably my first, in fact, now I'm thinking of my first environmental activism really was about wanting my little corner to be healthy.
Right.
And then I realized at a certain point, well, there's no way my little corner can be healthy and the rest is not. That's just selfish. It's all interconnected. Yeah.
I think that piece there is really important. It resonates with pretty much everyone that we feel like we have the right to live a life healthily without having polluted water, without having polluted air, actually eating healthy foods that are not contaminated with chemicals or anything else.
Right.
And then this work with the community rights movement, what you spoke to is like the realization that communities don't have the right to say they want that. They can only say that they have a right to a degree of that. Right. And that's shocking. I think that's the eye opener for me in terms of the importance of the community rights movement. Is that connection?
It is when you really realize it. The whole idea of democracy in America is sort of based on, in a way, on self-determination, right? We have a right to have a say in our communities, and we don't have that. And very slowly, the Declaration of Independence, which really was quite clear, and the early constitutions were really quite clear about corporate power being a problem, because that's what we were fighting in the English, was those huge East India Company and so on. Early constitutions had very strict legal control of corporations and what they couldn't do, and the citizens could nullify the corporate charters if the corporation was harmful. Then what happened was first happened was the Constitution, which created the Commerce Clause, and all of the environmental law in our country is under the Commerce Clause. So you immediately realize, okay, it's not a thing unto itself.
Right. It's just a subject to a mechanism, and the mechanism is the thing that is enshrined, protected, and the subject is life itself.
Yeah. And so what happened was the Supreme Court kept interpreting and adding more rights, more corporate rights, and taking more of them away from humans. That's what's happened.
I have this something I was going to bring up later, but it seems like we're right at it now. And this is from the CELDF newsletter, and it just really moved me. And I guess I'll read this and then
Yes.
ask you my question, and we can go further. But it's, quote, the relevance of our revolutionary history is growing ever more apparent as we revisit the problem of deposing an illegitimate king faced by American colonists through a modern lens.
Yeah.
What every community resident faces when corporate managers apply for state and federal permits to cite is a complete and utter disregard for the civil and political authority of the people to use their local governments to govern the behavior of corporations when they arrive, permits in hand. And this is in bold. We're told we live in a democracy, but for the life of us, we can't find it when we try to protect our families and environment from the injuries imposed by the corporate class. And I guess my agenda on some of this is to look at optics and how culture is being transmitted, how our consciousness has become really deformed. And I guess it seems like what you guys have done, like to hook into propaganda value is too superficial a way to describe it, but to hook into a way of really getting people to think. And
Yeah.
I'd like you to speak on trying to wake up part of that original American social contract to make these practices, taking back power from law-protected corporations, align with our original national mission and make being stewards of the earth a part of a natural kind of patriotism.
Right. Yeah. I think, so I would say that it's sort of what starts to happen in, or it has happened in some of these communities in Pennsylvania where Tom first got started, and other communities where the community got together and said, okay, we don't want whatever it might be, a fracking well or right next to the school, right? And then they found out, they went and petitioned and did all the stuff, went to the meetings, and then found they couldn't say no. And then they started going, why can't we say no? What is this about? And they started to educate themselves. And then what CELDF has done is help people write local laws that express their vision for what the community is. And that those local laws have evolved over time as CELDF has sort of figured out more what needs to be in the local law when the corporation or the state comes back and tries to slam it and defeat it. But those local laws sort of express that vision of what the community wants itself to be, i.e., to have these rights. And to be able to protect the environment, and for the environment, the ecosystems within the communities to have rights,
right?
Which is such a revolutionary concept within our way of thinking. And I think one of the things that was so exciting to me about nature rights for nature, when I first heard it was, I think it just does something to your mind when you stop thinking of nature as property,
right,
or something that's a resources, right? Which is at best how most, even environmentalists, think of nature as resources. Mm-hmm. And instead think of our environment, our natural environment, as our ecosystems, our living world of which we are a part. And having inalienable rights of its own. So there are communities that have now passed laws. The first one, I think, was Tamaqua in Pennsylvania, a very small community that a woman who's a nurse at the high school, and she and a few other people in their little tiny city, what they called a township, or were they can't remember, but anyway, the people who were the county supervisors or the township supervisors, they created a law that was the first ever rights of nature law that gave rights to their ecosystems. And they did that in Tamaqua, Pennsylvania, a tiny little town, and then Pittsburgh, within a couple of years, passed an anti-fracking law that had the same structure, stripping corporate rights and giving rights to nature. In that case, I believe it was the rivers in Pittsburgh, meaning that they had a right not to be polluted. They had a right to be protected. And many other communities since then, small communities, have passed these local laws giving nature a right to exist, flourish, and evolve. 2 countries have since placed these rights within their constitutions. Ecuador was the first, and CELDF was involved with that, and then Bolivia. So in the Constitution of Ecuador, the newly rewritten constitution happened about 5 years ago, ecosystems were given the right to exist, flourish, and evolve. And what that means is that within their system of law in Ecuador, when a mining company came into the rainforest and said, we want to be able to mine, and in order to do that, we need a logging company to come in and cut down all the trees so we can have roads, the ecosystem of the rainforest could stand for itself. A lawsuit could be brought to stop the logging company from logging the road on behalf of this ecosystem. So just like when a child, if a child has rights in courts legally, but that child doesn't speak for itself in the court, the same way an ecosystem doesn't have a voice that speaks through legal language, but the lawyers can stand in for the ecosystem and say, and in Ecuador that has now happened. A logging company was stopped, a judge using that law. So that's thrilling when that starts to happen.
It's a really good metaphor, the rights of a child.
Yeah, because ecosystems are, it's sort of funny because, the world, the planet is a gigantic ecosystem. And in the end, it's going to last, right?
Right.
We're all entirely dependent. But within within our homes and communities, we can totally mess it up in every possible way. And so, so it is like a child in the sense that it's sort of defenseless against our assaults, against corporate assaults. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's phenomenal that the rights of nature is starting to seep into the language more so in the United States. And I know that in October, CELDF is hosting the Rights of Nature, the very first Rights of Nature conference.
Yes, that's right, at Tulane in New Orleans. And a few other countries have. New Zealand has given rights. Well, actually, has given personhood to their sort of sacred river, and I can't remember the name of it. And the Ganges has also been given personhood rights in India. So this is seeping in various places, and I just think what happens in the mind and in our thinking when we start to think of these entities as having rights themselves is what's most important. It's like, it just shifts our way of seeing ourselves instead of, again, seeing nature not as resources, but as part of this living entity that we are a part of.
Right. And we're sold like a great deal of separation constantly by almost every sort of cultural artifact that we're all targets of. And so trying to find a way through that to get back to we are like very simply, very real, connected to water, air, soil, and all the metabolic processes of the earth. Like that's how literally we live and die. So I don't know how we've done such a great job of tool making culture to keep people from realizing that or to keep people from acting.
Well, our minds have been brainwashed, right? We're really brainwashed. And I think it's pretty natural because in the days when people first came to the United States, for instance, I mean, it didn't seem like there was any end to nature, right? It
Right.
didn't seem like there's no way, no way it could be endangered. We could log as much as we wanted, and there's still endless more forests. Now that, we are where we are in the planet, I mean, I think that in a way it's sort of natural evolution that our thinking must change now.
Right.
Um, and it didn't have to, and probably very early on in our tribal consciousness, we knew we were part of nature.
Right.
But the Industrial Revolution, everything just completely messed with that. And I think one of the metaphors they use in CELDF, in the democracy school, which is basically a 3-day school where you really look at sort of the history of American history in general and the law especially. And one of the metaphors is colonization. We start out as an English colony, and we're all colonized in our minds to a certain extent. And it takes, we sort of accept the myth that America is a democracy. And it's not easy to uncolonize your mind when this has been bred into you from childhood on, even when the evidence is right in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I've been working with CELDF now for off and on for 12 years. I wrote the book with them. I have made little movies and videos and so on, and I still find myself that I have a capacity still to be surprised at all by the horrors of what are going on. And I have to say that, the current situation that we're in with the current president,
Mm-hmm.
and, the only good thing you can say about it is it's impossible to pretend anymore.
Right. It's sort of like the mantra every day, like a bright line. All the other things that we could allow ourselves to say, oh, this is a little foggy, or maybe it's just a learning curve, like that doesn't apply anymore.
Right. It isn't so bad, really. Yeah. So, but for instance, the fact that so many people think of the EPA as will possibly save them when a corporation comes in and decides to, mine or do whatever it is. And in CELDF has been fighting for years and years, telling communities, don't bother. The EPA will not protect you. You're going to spin your wheels. You're going to spend all your bake sales and your fundraise, everything you do to get your community to fight something. You're going to put all that energy into going and getting the environmental impact statement, and they're still going to come back and give permits. You need to try something different, and it's very hard for people. And even the mainstream environmental organizations are still, because environmental law worked for a little bit, when it was first the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, it did make a difference. But now the people who are supposed to enforce them and who are writing all the laws are, it's the foxes in the hen house.
Yeah.
They're all the industry, and that has been true for a while. It was true under Obama as well, but now people can no longer pretend it's any different. It's not happening, and I think this is a fraught and dangerous, but also extremely pregnant and teachable time.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it, for sure.
Yeah. There was a quote that I saw in on the website of the CELDF website that kind of speaks to what you're saying now. Is that oh, my mind, I just lost it.
Well, I have one.
Do it.
Okay. This speaks nearby where you're at, and something else I wanted you to speak on. It's kind of like on breaking through the cultural habits and the blind spots without attending to people's drives to conspiracy or resistance to interconnectivity. And the quote from the CELDF worksheet is that conventional activism chases after cures for each separate ailment. Well-intentioned people organize to support research into alleviating the disease, and that one only. People wear colored ribbons to show their hearts are in the right place. Corporate sponsors are often cover the cost of running such campaigns. Ideas such as good corporate neighbors run TV ads saturated with sympathy and pathos. Science will find the cure, they intone, if you help. Curiously organizing around stopping the causes of these diseases are met with hostility, denial of science and accusations of bad faith, censorship of inquiries into the harms caused by resource extractors and the causes of diseases, contaminations, poisonings is the norm. From municipal town meetings where public comment is curtailed to government bureaucracies where state employees are issued gag orders backed by subtle threats to their livelihoods. It is a recipe for disaster in any democracy, a disaster that will be not announced on the nightly news. And nor will there be a petition circulated for people to sign who want to stop it. This seems to me like kind of a rebuke of the very compartmentalized way that most folks with good intentions, whatever amount of time they have outside of their jobs and family obligations, people who really generally want to help, but they have been backed into corners that are absurdly ineffective.
That one of the things they teach in the democracy school is called the box of allowable activism.
Mm-hmm.
And
the
box of allowable activism, I might have a picture of it somewhere. Maybe not. It would take time to find. It should be in here, but maybe it was in the democracy school curriculum. So
we can throw it up on the edit.
Yeah, but what you're referring to, and it's what I was saying about, most people a lot of people come to this kind of activism in these communities because they have to. It's because there's a threat.
Right.
And so they're focused on the threat and how to stop it. And they've realized very slowly that the underlying condition is a lack of democracy.
Right.
And this is really what happened to the people at CELDF is they started out trying to protect a town from this kind of mining here and that kind of mining there and this kind of sludge dumping there and that kind of hog farm there and this kind of water withdrawal there. And they at a certain point were like, wait, what does all of this have in common? People can't say no. What does all of this have in common? A structure of law that doesn't allow people to say no.
Right.
And that's why they changed the activism to be about let's look at what would allow you to say no. What is instead of what are you against? What specific assault are you against? What is it that you want for your community? And what does that look like if you wrote your own law about it? And then fought for that. So that if next year it's not fracking, but next year it's some other new thing, right? Or some other thing that a different corporation wants to come, you've written the law, you've done the bottom line work of saying we have a right to say no, we have a right to ban certain things. Mm-hmm. And, I think one of it speaks to the larger issue, I think, in environmental organizing all along, which is it's ended up being pitted, really. I mean, the environmental justice movement came along and finally people started seeing there's a common urgency for communities of color, underserved communities that most of these terrible projects are sited in poor communities, whether rural white or urban color. And and at the same time, the labor, and the environmental movement were pitted against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I think we're going to save our butts here is if we learn to build coalitions between all these various. It's not factions, it's really we're standing up for our common humanity and social justice and environmental justice, right? And and it affects all these different communities in different ways. And whether it's workers not, making a wage that they can't live on, or a mine coming in and under your house, so
Right.
your house collapse, or etc. And so, and I am feeling like, the word intersectionality is becoming pretty commonplace now. People are beginning to see, all these different just like our ecology, we're all connected. All these movements are at bottom expression, are responding to underlying issues with that we don't have democracy, and that we think wrong about nature.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's that coming together around democracy and actually seeing that there's been a game played against us. There's been a game of separation, and that's why it may feel like factions or may feel like something, but we're really all working towards the same goal. But there's this game that's being played that's keeping us from seeing it. And the quote that I was going to say before was, "The system is fixed, and we need to break it." That's on the website for CELDF, and I really like that because going back to your book of We the People, the stories from the community rights movement in the United States, really highlights and shows that the people who are actually recognizing that there's this game of separation, that the system is fixed, and that they're working to break it, so they can reclaim what you're speaking about, gaining their right to say no to things that are toxic to them and their children and their families and their communities. So we spoke about this before. I love the stories in these books, and I would love for you to speak about the inspiration that drove you to write this, and maybe pull out a couple stories from that.
Sure. I think that I mentioned Tamaqua, which is this tiny little town in Pennsylvania, very pretty. And I met Kathy Miorelli. Kathy's a nurse, cares about animals, and school nurse. And she started realizing that there was a way higher cancer rate than there should have been around. And she started investigating and recognizing that the place had been used for dumping fly ash and various things from mining, and decided to band it together with some other people and to stop this dumping of certain kinds of sludge and fly ash and things into what were initially mining pits, as so they became for waste dumping. And they passed this the first ever local ordinance, a law saying that they banned that. They gave rights to nature. It was the first time that happened. And she just did it and worked at it, and with the mayor, got the mayor on board of this tiny little town. And no, she's like I don't want to say Rosa Parks, that's not quite right, but she just put her time and energy into making this happen, and it happened. And Doug Shields, who is on the Pittsburgh City Council, who fought for the anti-fracking law in Pittsburgh, also just regular guy, just saw how important it was to do, decided that he just didn't want fracking within Pittsburgh. And I mean, it takes like any kind of activism that you have to work. It's a lot of work is what it is. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of talking. It's sitting down with neighbors and other people, and you don't necessarily go after the people who are going to disagree with you the most, but you go to the people who have common, you find common ground, what your common concerns are, and you educate people, you inform them. And people are busy, and you have to knocking their doors, and it's not an easy thing to do. I find it rather hard myself. But you frequently, when there's an immediate threat, it's a little easier because you're fighting for your own health and the health of children and your neighbors. And one of the stories that is very inspiring to me is Stacy and Judy. This is Grant Township, Pennsylvania, another small community where they've been fighting an injection well, and where they want to dump fracking water. And they got together. They decided they didn't want it. They've been fighting it. They passed a law. The corporation came and sued them. The state came and said, preempted the law, which happens a lot. Preemption is one of the big problems. The state can say, you cannot pass this law, basically. And for that to get handled, CELDF there's started to be a number of states have organized community rights networks for the state to try to start driving this kind of right into the state constitutions. So that's sort of the next phase of organizing. But anyway, Stacy is a sort of heavy metal, lover, and not your typical rides a motorcycle, not your typical environmental, granola activist like I am. And her mother is the one who turned her on to who had heard of CELDF and got one of the organizers to come speak with them. And they've been fighting, and they CELDF brought a suit on behalf, I think it's the first one in the U.S., on behalf of an ecosystem, which is in Grant Township. It's the little, it's called the Little Mahoning River Watershed. The Little Mahoning River Watershed, with, I think, Tom as its spokesperson, its advocate, is intervening in the suit to protect the township against this well. And there have been two since then. So that's the first time in the U.S. that we've had a lawsuit brought by an ecosystem. But they also decided, because the mining, the company that's disposing the waste this way said, we don't care, what law you pass, we're going to do it anyway. They basically said, well, if you come here, we're going to just put our bodies in the way. And then the city, the Grant Township supervisors passed a law saying that civil disobedience, in order to stand up against this company and to stop their water being polluted, is legal within the town. So, they are this tiny little town, and they're fighting and fighting to keep their water system clean.
That is amazing. It's fascinating, the multi-level barriers that are in front of communities. It's like communities don't have a right to say no. So when they go to the city says, okay, we can do this, but the state says no to that. And then when the state says yes to it, the federal government says no to it.
Yeah,
and it's all being funded by the corporation.
It's not just the corporations, it's the states. So, for instance, the EPA is suing Grant Township and Highland Township in Pennsylvania for the laws that they passed.
Well,
yeah.
How? Why?
And I'm afraid I don't have the exact information. It's in the CELDF newsletter. But basically, the EPA is saying they don't have a right to do this.
Is that because the EPA is just the fox in the henhouse?
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's not only toothless for protecting the earth, but it's full of sharp teeth for defending its hegemony as a fake agency.
That's right. that's a very strong, harsh way of putting it, but it's very true. Yeah, it's crazy, that they. I mean, they say it's just because of this legal thing, but and these communities have hardly any funds, so that they can be bankrupt in no time at all.
Yeah.
So you've got the corporation who can also sue for past lost profit and all that kind of stuff. So, and the town that the supervisors are saying, well, we're broke anyway, so sue us.
Right.
Yeah.
We have nothing left to lose, basically.
But what does this do for the community? So, like, you have, I imagine, I'm only projecting because I don't know how many people were working on this, but I imagine it's a small group of people
Very small.
pushing this issue forward, kind of gathering public support and interest behind it as they move forward, and then the state or the company, EPA comes in and puts a big boot in front of them saying we're going to sue you. What does that do to the community at large, not just the people organized?
Well, of course, there are some people in the community that, like, basically the person whose land the well is on wants the money they're going to get from the dumping. So, probably if there were no one around there who was willing to say yes, this issue wouldn't exist. But yeah, it's really hard for the community, and even if everyone is on board, no one wants to be sued, and so you can see how up against it people are to be willing to go through it with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And some are. It's just they're so clear. It's like they found what they're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's on some level maybe true for Stacy. It's like. No, they can't get away with it. It's wrong. We're going to take a stand. And for other communities, what does happen is once the corporation comes in and sues, or the state, they give it up.
Do you think this particular case study is about a community that has nothing left to lose? And like their stubbornness and orneriness is like, it's just a pure expression of like, not having anything to lose and then like not compromising either. Realizing like the reality of what's at stake.
Yeah, and recognizing in that way, I think it is something. There's something similar with what happened with the civil rights movement and Rosa Parks. Sort of like, there's a lot of communities and some pass these laws, and 2 years later, when they are being sued, they drop the law because they can't keep it up. They can't fight that.
Right.
And other communities just are saying, okay, we have to do this, and we're doing it not just for ourselves, right? We're doing it for the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very brave people.
Absolutely.
And as I said, it tends to be people in really poor communities. And it's a very tough fight until it isn't, right?
Yeah. And this book, We the People, that you wrote, is full of these stories of these individuals, of these people who.
I'm holding up the book. See it?
We're both holding. Okay. It's full of these stories of people who are engaged with this and being successful at it, and they're. So I encourage people to pick it up and read it. It's inspirational and it's actually real-time history. I just want to say that Zombie Popcorn is giving away 3 copies to listeners of this show. Visit this website to enter into the contest, zombiepopcorn.com. But I don't want to just leave it there. I want to actually go into is like you mentioned that a lot of people who are working on this or small communities or poor communities. What can we do? What can me and Thomas and people listening to this to support these people or actually get involved with this?
Okay,
this work?
I would say if you are interested in this work for its own sake, from what you're hearing, I mean, there's a number of ways, but if you're just like, wow, I love this and I'm interested and I want to know more, go to the CELDF website, the CELDF website, and there are ways to get involved. One thing you can do is take the democracy school. And there are a number being held, I think a couple in the fall and next spring. And it is an incredible education. And yeah, you come out a lot smarter about what's so, and in touch with a number of people. Now, CELDF right now is active in 6 states. If you happen to be in one of those 6 states, for instance, Pennsylvania, Colorado, New Hampshire, Oregon, Maine, leaving one out, not sure, but you could get active with the network that is happening across the state. If not, you know, as I said, there's other things you can do to get involved on and take a look at the website. If you're in a community where, you know, I live in Venice, California, and we don't really have a local assault happening, I think, because we're a fairly wealthy community, which is, of course, they're much more hesitant to come in and mess with us because we have more means to fight. But Culver City, which is nearby, has fracking going on. And there's a group there trying to stop it. And I have gone to their meetings and I have talked and tried to educate people about these issues, because once you realize how rigged the system is, you can help people not get caught up in putting all their energy into trying to, you know, go through the typical regulatory process. You can educate people to the fact that it's probably a waste of time, and that there's other ways to go about trying to stop these activities. And so if you're in a community that has an issue that is an assault that you know about and that you care about, one thing you can do is start going to the meetings that people are beginning to band together to fight, and you can educate people, because, you know, and I think this is a good time for that, because I think people are much more aware now because of, you know, he who shall not be named, and
Can't invite the devil in.
all those guys, you know, all the people who are running the EPA now. I mean, there's no more pretense. So I think people are beginning to realize they got to do it for themselves. And that's the only way they can, and people are going to have to stand up in ways, as we're seeing in all the other arenas right now in this country, you know, the whole resist movement. People are going to have to stand up and take matters, I don't know, take it into their own hands, but they're going to have to even put their bodies on the line if they want to stop the harm.
Yeah, I think it's the realization that no one's going to come save us. It's going to have to come from us.
Yes, it's up to us.
Absolutely. So I just want to restate the offerings is go to the CELDF website, CELDF.org.
Right.
Connect, if in your area, to groups you are already organizing. Participate in a democracy school.
Yes.
And I think you said, because you spoke about going to speak, that you can actually reach out to CELDF if you want a speaker to come. Is that something that is offered, or?
They are doing a speakers bureau now. I don't think it's in full force yet, because I have said I would be on it, and I haven't yet found out that I'm going anywhere to speak. But I know that that's coming. I know they always need more help, and you know, it's a small organization, and I think getting word out there in the media. For instance, I think Stacy Long's story of Grant Township was written up in Rolling Stone, and I think that made a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think that more attention in the right places could bring more people and more funds and more ability. So, for instance, one of the things that they do in a community, so for instance, Oregon is trying to pass a number of local laws and doing some of them by referendum. Colorado next year, I believe, in 18, we'll have a referendum on the ballot to stop state preemption.
Oh, nice.
So to pass a law in a referendum that would then become law in Colorado that would stop the state being able to stop local communities from making laws. So there are different states. It's all in different states are doing different things. Now I got onto that for some reason. There was some thought about how you could be involved. And I'm not, or something about Oregon, and the thought is gone.
Right.
Does California it doesn't have a CELDF in California?
No, we don't. We've had we've had democracy schools here. We've had, Shannon Biggs, who is part of the Rights of Nature work and community rights work, lives, I think she's certainly based in California, and she will come and speak to lots of different groups. I can't imagine that California won't at some point start doing this work. But she's the person who is sort of representing the work in California right now.
Okay.
Great. I also want to add just two more resources. Obviously, We the People, the book that you wrote.
And the movie, right.
Connect with that, get inspired, and see what people are doing so you can kind of be steeped in that. And what you just mentioned, We the People, the movie, which CELDF has put out. So I want to take a moment just to play the quick trailer for that so people can see that. This is additional resources to use in addition with the book to have kind of a gathering and show the screening so you can be in conversation with it. Even if you don't have connections in your area, start the conversation and be aware of it. So we're going to play that trailer now, We the People.
Communities across America have been poisoned by pollution, toxins, sludge, fracking, you name it.
The list goes on.
Elementary schools up here that had the well spewing out onto the playground.
This has been a dead stream for a number of years now.
This is a sacrifice zone.
People are trying to stop it.
If we pollute our air and we pollute our water, we're actually destroying ourselves.
We get heartbreak stories every week about communities that were literally being killed, whether it's sludge or other toxics.
But what they find is that the law is against them.
We're living in a system that does not allow representative government at the local level.
They don't want people to know what's going on here.
The current system of law makes sustainability illegal.
The problem is not toxic dumps.
We thought we had an oil and gas problem. We thought we had a fracking problem here. We realized that no, what we have here is a democracy problem.
It is the very foundations of our country.
The system that we have today we describe as a corporate state. It's in essence about a corporate minority that has been specially privileged by law itself. It's a violent, brutal system that operates.
These people are challenging the oligarchy and winning.
To bring this legislation to the table is the only option that we have.
Okay, you're coming in here with your business. Let the people know what you're going to do, and if it's so safe, then let them be the judge of that.
The movement is building.
Let the elected leaders and everybody else know that there are people who are watching.
We the People.
Do I have the right, as a citizen, as a community, to say no? And we said Yeah, we have that right.
won't go down quietly.
I love the way they intimidate us with lawsuits.
We will fight for our democracy.
We don't have democracy where we live, and we don't have democracy anywhere in the system. So it's about creating that democratic system of local control and self-government in the places where we live.
To protect nature and our communities.
We are stewards of nature. It is our duty to protect that which sustains us.
The most valuable thing in this community should be the people.
This is the second American Revolution.
We don't live in a democracy. And if you live in a corporate state, there's only one option left to you, which is to dismantle it and build something new.
We the People. Coming soon.
It says it's coming soon. It is out now. You can actually order it from the CELDF website and other places. We did a screening with it at where I work, and it's a great film.
Good.
Anything?
No, Anneke, thank you so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure.
I want to add one thing, if you don't mind.
Please.
As much as you want.
I know this is something that comes up for people a lot when we talk about community rights. It's an area that can be a little confusing. People are like, well, wait, if communities have rights to, stop things from happening and say no, does that mean in the end they'd have a right to say, okay, we don't want any, Latinos in our community, right? And I just want to make really clear, this is all about expanding rights, saying no to harm. Mm-hmm. But in terms of rights, it's about expanding them, not contracting them. It's about expanding human rights, expanding rights for ecosystems, and, taking away some of the corporate rights that have been given in the last couple of 100 years. It's not about taking away any human rights. Mm-hmm. I just want to be really clear about that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, because it's really important right now that it's sad that we're at this moment, but it needs to be stated and separated because, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And thank you for your time, your stories, your work. Every time I speak to you, I'm inspired and fired up and ready to move forward and get in the trenches. So thank you. And
thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah, anytime.
Sure.
So thank you for watching New Architects or listening, if you're listening to the podcast side of it. I'm Jason.
I'm Thomas.
And we're the New Architects. Have a great night.